Right then, here we are once again inside the wonderful world of War Thunder, where today we're taking a little look at everyone's favourite German biplane, the Heinkel He. All four of them. And yes, there are four. Well, five technically, but one of them is a super special event aircraft, and, well, I'll be talking about all this later. First, I need to tell you that I'll be talking about the history and technical details. If, however, you want to jump the gun and go straight to the battle, then listen to me very carefully, for I shall say this only once. Exit full screen, scroll down a smidge. No, that's too far. Up a bit. You see that little area named description? No? Okay, well, it's the section with the smaller writing just below my picture. You see my little avatar? The little guy with the gas mask? That's me. There should be a little section below that with the description. If you look there, there should be a little blue number. If you go ahead and press that with your mouse cursor, that should take you to the battle directly. Got it? Good. Right, for the rest of us, let's put on our black leather coats, our black leather gloves, and our black leather flying helmets, polish up our iron crosses, strap on our Lugers, and turn the Wagner up to full as we dive screaming into the history of the Heinkel He. Germany was one of the earliest pioneers in aviation history, as with a lot of countries it turns out. As far back as 1891, a man named Otto Lilienthal began experimenting with gliders, the results of which greatly furthered people's understanding of how lift worked and instilled the idea of a potential powered aerial winged vehicle. Although Lilienthal was killed by one of his experimental gliders in 1816, he stood as a major influence to those following him into the world of flight, including the Wright brothers, who credited him as their main inspiration, or one of them. German engineering also played an important role during the pioneering age, with such aircraft as the Electric Taube, which was one of the earliest warplanes being used by the Italians in Libya in 1911 for bombing and reconnaissance. It was later used during the beginning of the First World War. On one notable occasion, propaganda leaflets were dropped from an Electric Taube monoplane onto Paris. However, the aircraft was rather slow and unmanoeuvrable, and so was withdrawn from frontline service in January 1915. During the First World War, the Imperial German Flying Corps, or Fliegertruppen des Deutschen Kaiserreiches, later changed to Imperial German Air Service, or Deutsche Luftstreitkräfte, in October 1916, was the air arm of the German Army. Unlike Britain, who created the independent Royal Air Force even as the First World War was going on in 1918, Germany did not create an independent air force until 1935. Germany's first true fighter aircraft, the Fokker E-1, entered service in June 1915. It was essentially a Fokker M5, a simple monoplane first flown in 1913 and used as a reconnaissance aircraft. However, it was fitted with a revolutionary device that transformed it into a very dangerous fighter aircraft. This device was of course the machine gun synchronizer, which meant that a machine gun could be made to fire only when there was a gap between the turning propeller blades for the bullet to pass through. The Fokker E-1, followed by the Fokker E-2 with a bigger engine, the Fokker E-3 with broader wings, and the Fokker E-4 with an even more powerful rotary engine and provision for 2 or sometimes 3 synchronized machine guns, were the aircraft primarily responsible for the Fokker Scourge, a period of time between August 1915 and January 1916, when German fighters had almost total air supremacy over the Western Front. This only ended when the French with their Nieuport 11 and the British with the Royal Aircraft Factory FE-2B and the Airco DH-2 managed to successfully compensate for their lack of the interrupter gear. The French by attaching a Lewis machine gun high up on the upper wing of the Nieuport, which allowed it to fire over the arc of the aircraft's propeller, and the British by building pusher-type biplanes, whereby the engine and propeller were located behind the pilot, allowing a Lewis machine gun to be attached to the front of the aircraft without the obstacle of a great big spinning propeller to worry about. These aircraft successfully ended the reign of the Fokker Eindeckers. As the First World War continued, Germany continued building more and more powerful fighter aircraft, countering the more capable aircraft fielded by the Entente. The Halberstadt D2, the Albatros series, the Fokker DR-1 and later D-7, as well as several notable aces such as Ernst Ude, Max Immelmann, Hermann Göring, and perhaps the most famous fighter pilot of all time, Manfred von Richthofen, known infamously as the Red Baron due to his habit of painting the aircraft he flew bright red, all established Germany as a formidable power in the field of aerial combat. However, after the war, as part of the Treaty of Versailles, the Luftstreitkräfte, as well as the Navy's Marine Fliegerabteilung, were disbanded in 1920. The treaty also demanded the destruction of all German military aircraft, which is why it's next to impossible to find any historical examples of First World War German aircraft. A little short-sighted on the part of the Allies, if you ask me. I'd have liked to have seen an Albatros or a Fokker Dreidecker in a museum somewhere. Oh well, can't be helped, unless I had some sort of time machine. Anyway, because Germany was rather annoyed at the mandates of the Treaty of Versailles, even under the Weimar Republic, which was the government installed to administer post-war Germany under the supervision of the Allies, the Germans took several steps to defy the treaty in secret. One example was in maintaining an air force. Since all the military aircraft had been scrapped, German pilots trained using civilian aircraft and gliders, under the pretense that they were training to become pilots for Deutsche Lufthansa, which was quickly growing as a major commercial airline. Because the Soviet Union was largely shunned by Western Europe for being communist and all that, they had some sympathy for Germany and the way they had been treated after their defeat. Because of this, they helped Germany establish a secret military training airfield at Lipetsk in 1924. Here, as well as at Red Army Air Force bases across the Soviet Union, German pilots, many of whom would one day become aces shooting down Soviet aircraft, were trained. In 1933, Adolf Hitler came to power, and the Weimar Republic was replaced by the Nazi Party. Since one of Hitler's main points to popularity was the repeal of the Treaty of Versailles, he set about rearming Germany. As part of this rearmament, the German Air Force was re-established, only this time as an independent military branch, the Luftwaffe, on the 15th of May 1933, with Hermann Göring, the former World War I fighter ace, at its head. Because the Luftwaffe had been created by the Nazis, it had the strongest ideological ties to the party, unlike the Heer and the Kriegsmarine, which still maintained traditional German hierarchies and practices. The establishment of the Nationalsozialistische Fliegerkorps, or NSFK, which translates to National Socialist Flyer Corps, which trained new pilots prior to them joining the Luftwaffe, further contributed to the Nazification of the Air Force, due to the fascist undertones to its teachings. As a result of all this, the Luftwaffe often featured heavily in Nazi propaganda. We'll talk more about the formation of the Luftwaffe in later episodes. For now, it's time to talk about Heinkel. Ernst Heinkel began his career working for Hansa Brandenburg during the First World War, a company that specialized in making single-engine reconnaissance seaplanes. By the end of the war, Heinkel had risen to the position of chief designer for the firm. Although Hansa Brandenburg closed down in 1919, having succumbed to the difficult post-war aviation market, Ernst Heinkel succeeded in establishing his own company, Heinkel Flugzeugwerk, in 1922, following the relaxations of some of the restrictions imposed to German aviation brought about by the Treaty of Versailles. The company began by manufacturing compressed air seaplane catapults for use on ocean liners. These would be used to launch short-range mail seaplanes so that the vessel could exchange mail with the shore without having to dock. These catapults were installed on the SS Bremen and the SS Europa ships, operated by the German Norddeutscher Lloyd Company. Heinkel's first major production aircraft was the Heinkel HE-70 Blitz, a high-speed single-engine mail plane of all-metal construction, which first flew in 1932. This aircraft was noted for its high speed. Indeed, it broke several airspeed records in its time. Its design went on to heavily influence the development of the Heinkel He-111 airliner, which would one day become the backbone of the Luftwaffe's bomber fleets. But that, boys and girls, is a story for another day, because now we're going to talk about what must be my favourite topic, meaningless little biplanes. Although Heinkel Flugzeugwerk's first domestically produced aircraft did not fly until the early 1930s, when Hitler and the Nazi Party rose to power and overturned the Treaty of Versailles, Heinkel did design several aircraft for other companies. These include the Heinkel HD-17, which was a military reconnaissance biplane produced by the Swedish manufacturer Svenska Aero AB for the secret German training airfields in the USSR, the Heinkel He-1 reconnaissance monoplane seaplane manufactured in Sweden as the Svenska S1, and the Heinkel HD-55 flying boat, which was flown from Soviet warships. The company's first military aircraft, produced not in secret, was the Heinkel He-45, a single-engine biplane light bomber armed with two machine guns, one fixed forward firing and one mounted on a scarf ring in the rear cockpit, and able to carry up to 300 kilograms of ordnance. This was one of the first aircraft adopted by the fledgling Luftwaffe, who used it for a number of different roles, including training and reconnaissance, as well as in its intended role of light bomber. 512 He-45s were built, production being shared between Heinkel, Gotha, Focke-Wulf and the Bayerische Flugzeugwerk, which will soon be rebranded as Messerschmitt AG. Next came the Heinkel He-46, a single-engine parasol wing monoplane designed as a reconnaissance and army cooperation aircraft. Around 500 were built between 1933 and 1934, and soon equipped every Luftwaffe aerial reconnaissance squadron. These were used by the Condor Legion during the Spanish Civil War. However, by the time of the German invasion of Poland in 1939, most had been replaced by the Henschel HS-126s, and were relegated to training roles. A few were supplied to Hungary prior to Operation Barbarossa, and in 1943, taking a leaf out of the Red Army Air Force's book with their Polikarpov U-2 night harassment squadrons, many Heinkel He-46s were taken from training squadrons and once again pressed into frontline service, this time as nighttime harassment bombers in 1943. Heinkel's next aircraft was the Heinkel He-49. This was designed as a single-engine biplane fighter armed with two synchronized machine guns, and first flew in 1932. Although only 4 prototypes ever flew, its design was modified for use by the Heinkel He-51, which is the subject of today's video. But hold on to that thought, there's one more Heinkel aircraft wedged between these two, which we need to look at. And that is, of course, the Heinkel He-50. This was a single-engine biplane dive bomber, originally designed for the Imperial Japanese Navy. Although Japan rejected the aircraft after testing a pre-production example, the Luftwaffe adopted the He-50 in 1935 and commissioned the construction of 60 examples. China also ordered 12 slightly modified He-50s, however these were commandeered by the Nazis and delivered instead to the Luftwaffe. The He-50 served as the Luftwaffe's first dive bomber, but was soon replaced by the Henschel HS-123 and the Junkers Ju-87, and was relegated to the training role. In 1943, as with many German training aircraft, the He-50 was redeployed as a nighttime harassment bomber. Which brings us finally to the subject of today's video, the Heinkel He-51. As stated before, the He-51 initially began as the He-49. 3 prototypes were built, each with minor upgrades. However, the 4th, renamed He-51, featured a new tail assembly, new wings, a new undercarriage, and a new radiator design. This last aircraft was ordered into production by the Luftwaffe, and deliveries began in 1935. The initial production variant was the Heinkel He-51A-1, of which some 150 examples were built. In August 1936, 6 of these were sent to the Spanish Nationalist Air Force. These were at first very successful, being superior to most Spanish Republican aircraft at the time. Indeed, on the first day of their deployment, these 6 He-51s managed to shoot down 2 Nieuport Ni-52 fighters, a Breguet 19 light bomber, and even a Poter 540 reconnaissance bomber. Buoyed by these successes, more HE-51s were delivered to the Spanish nationalists, to the point where 2 squadrons were fully equipped with them. When the German Legion Condor arrived in Spain on the side of the nationalists, 3 squadrons were equipped with HE-51s, including a few of the new and improved HE-51B-1s, which featured structural strengthening. However, the time of the HE-51 as a frontline fighter was waning. In late 1936, the Spanish Republican Air Force began to receive more advanced aircraft from the Soviet Union. These included the Polikarpov I-15, which performed roughly on par with the HE-51, and the Polikarpov I-16 monoplane fighter, which significantly outperformed the German biplanes, and the Tupolev SB so-called high-speed bomber. The Tupolev aircraft certainly earned its unofficial designation. With a top speed of 450 km per hour, or 280 miles per hour, in level flight, it could outperform the Heinkel He-51 by some 110 km per hour, or 70 miles per hour. Because the He-51 was now unable to intercept the Republican bombers, or effectively combat the Republican fighters, both the A-1 and B-1 variants were withdrawn from service as fighters. They were replaced in this role by the Fiat CR-32 in Spanish nationalist service, and in Legion Condor fighter squadrons by the Messerschmitt Bf-109. The He-51 was instead transferred to ground attack squadrons, a role to which it was more suited. A new variant, the He-51C-1, was produced with this role specifically in mind, for which it was equipped with mounting points for up to 6 10kg or 22-pound bombs. 100 of these, as well as 21 He-51C-2s fitted with better radio equipment, were manufactured, and were used as close support aircraft until the end of the Spanish Civil War. Spain continued to operate the He-51 as a utility aircraft until 1952. In Luftwaffe service, the He-51 was operated as a combat aircraft until 1938, at which point it was relegated to training roles. It was used in this role until 1941, at which point the surviving aircraft were given to the Bulgarians. These were woefully inferior to modern Soviet fighters and were quickly retired from service. And so ends the tale of the Heinkel He-51. But don't turn off your sets yet, because now we're going to take a little look at this fascinating little aircraft's technical details. Right, so here we have the Heinkel He-51, here in the wonderful world of War Thunder. Look at it there, isn't it lovely? Now, in-game we have a grand total of 5 variants of the He-51, but most people will only have access to 3. I'll explain why that is in a bit, but first let's just run down the list. In-game we have the Heinkel He-51A-1, the B-1, the C-1 and the C-1/late, as well as the He-51B-2. Let's start with the A-1, shall we? In War Thunder, the Heinkel He-51A-1 is a Rank 1 battle rating 1.0 reserve fighter aircraft. It is a single-engine, single-bay sesquiplane with a conventional tail assembly. It has a crew of 1, the pilot, who sits in the cockpit. The power plant consists of a single BMW 6 12-cylinder V-formation liquid-cooled piston engine delivering 750 horsepower or 552 kilowatts. This turns a twin-bladed, fixed-pitch wooden propeller, giving the He-51A1 a top speed of 272 km per hour or 169 miles per hour at 3,000 meters or 10,000 feet. The engine is fuel injected, so don't worry about negative G maneuvers. The aircraft is constructed of a steel tube frame covered at the front with stressed aluminium and on the rear fuselage and tail assembly with fabric. The wings are fabric covering a wooden frame. The maximum design speed of the aircraft is around 470 km per hour, or 292 miles per hour, and the maximum structural speed is around 515 km per hour, or 320 miles per hour. The landing gear is of the fixed tail skid configuration. The main units feature aerodynamic spats. The armament consists of two fixed forward-firing synchronized 7.92mm MG-17 machine guns located in the upper surface of the engine cowling, each belt fed from 500 round belts for a total of 1,000 rounds of ammunition. Ammunition choices are as follows: default with armor-piercing tracer, ball omnipurpose, armor-piercing incendiary, and adjustment incendiary bullets in an AP-T/B/B/AP-I/AI configuration. Universal belts with armor-piercing tracer, armor-piercing, adjustment incendiary, and armor-piercing incendiary bullets in an AP-T/AP/AI/AP-I configuration. Tracer belts with only armor-piercing tracer bullets, and stealth belts with adjustment incendiary and armor-piercing bullets in an AI/AP/AP/AP/AI configuration. An adjustment incendiary bullet, by the way, is a bullet with a capped nose that will deform upon impact with the target. This will angle the bullet due to the normalization effect, allowing it to penetrate the outer skin of the target more effectively, meaning that the incendiary part can do more damage. On this aircraft, unless you have a particular aversion to tracers, I would recommend the universal belts, as they have the highest concentration of incendiary rounds. These guns are actually pretty good. Although each round, being only a rifle caliber bullet, doesn't do much but damage by itself, the MG-17 has a pretty rapid rate of fire, meaning that most things you'll encounter will be fairly quickly picked apart, providing you can keep pouring fire into them. You may have trouble with bombers such as the Soviet TB-3 or the French F-222.2, them being such large aircraft they can soak up a lot of damage. In their cases, I'd recommend aiming for the pilots, or try to set a fuel tank or engine on fire. Directly on top of the B&W engine, between the two cylinder banks, is the auxiliary fuel tank, the main fuel tank being located directly underneath the pilot's feet in the cockpit. Both these tanks are self-sealing and can carry a total of 170 litres of fuel, 150 in the main tank, 20 in the auxiliary, which will give you a maximum flight time of around 50 minutes. In the front of the engine cowling are two ventilation slots, which appear to lead directly to the cylinders. On top of the cowling is an air scoop that appears to lead directly to the auxiliary fuel tank, however it is likely the manifold intake. Directly underneath the engine is the oil cooling system, the radiator for which is inside that little slot under the aircraft's chin. Protruding out of the sides of the engine cowling are 12 exhaust pipes, 6 on each side, 1 for each cylinder. These swoop down like that to keep the exhaust fumes out of the pilot's face. Between the landing gear legs is the radiator for the aircraft's Amatol liquid coolant. It's exposed, but I've found that it isn't as prone to taking damage as you might expect. Perhaps the legs of the landing gear protect it. Poking out of the front of the landing gear legs are what appear to be two pitot heads. The HE-51, being a single bay biplane, has only one set of bracing struts for each wing set. In the centre are 6 struts holding the upper wing on. The 2 rods at the back are actually the control rods connecting the flight stick to the upper wing ailerons. Out on the wings are 4 main wing struts, 2 in tandem on each side. These are braced with a simple X-pattern wire bracing arrangement. The biplane wings themselves are braced with double-cross wire braces connected in the centre by a steel rod. The front lower fuselage to upper wing wires are reinforced by a second wire, this being the wire under greatest strain while in flight. The landing gear main wheels are reinforced by 2 tandem bracing wires strung between them. and are connected to the lower wings by a single bracing wire on each side. Just inboard of the port rear outer bracing strut is the anemometer. The Heinkel He is a sesquiplane, and as such the upper wings are much longer and broader than the lower wings. They are also staggered forward of the lower pair. The upper pair also feature a slight dihedral angle, whereas the lower pair are horizontal. On the upper set of wings are the ailerons, which also feature trim tabs. On the lower pair, however, those control surfaces that look like ailerons are actually flaps. The He features a pair of plain trailing edge flaps on the lower wings, with 3 settings: combat, takeoff and landing. These make takeoff and landing spectacularly easy, and also serve to increase maneuverability in combat. A lot of people don't actually realise that the He has flaps. I confess that even I didn't know until I accidentally hit the flap button while recording footage for this very video. I just always assumed that they were a lower set of ailerons. Just goes to show that even after playing it for 6 years, War Thunder can still surprise you. That, or I'm just completely blind. On the port side of the fuselage are 2 steps for access to the cockpit. I'll talk about the cockpit interior after I've finished with the external features. Moving back, the fuselage changes from being metal skinned to fabric covered. On the port side, however, just aft of the cockpit are 2 metal panels. These are covers for what is presumably the radio for the upper panel, and the oxygen system for the lower one. Strung from 2 small pillars on the upper surface of both upper wingtips, braced by a wire attached to the upper fuselage just behind the cockpit and running to an anchor point on the front of the tail fin, is the radio antenna. The tail fin features a broad rounded rudder, itself sporting a trim tab. The tailplane is braced by a set of tandem bracing wires on both its upper and lower surfaces. The steel tail skid has a single bracing wire and does not appear able to rotate. The elevators each have a trim tab. There is no armour, so the pilot is especially vulnerable to attack, especially from behind or above. The He itself, being a biplane, is also pretty fragile, so try to avoid being shot at if at all possible. The aircraft is painted in what is called parade exhibition camouflage. The Heinkel He being the Luftwaffe's first fighter aircraft, they would naturally want to show it off to the press and public. From what I can tell, this particular pattern was used by a flight of He that flew for publicity purposes from Berlin to Debrecen in early 1936. This features the new standardized insignia arrangement in place that year, consisting of the Balkenkreuz near the wingtips on the upper surface of the upper wings and on the lower surface of the lower wings, as well as at the midpoint of the rear fuselage on both sides. On the starboard side of the tail fin are the 3 horizontal bands, black, white and red, of Imperial Germany. On the port side is the flag of the Nazi Party, the Hakenkreuz, or swastika, in black on a white circle on a red background. In June of 1936, the Nazi flag would replace the Imperial flag on the starboard side on all German aircraft. The 2 vertical black stripes are most likely unit markings, possibly those of Jagdgeschwader 131, although I'm not certain about that. In War Thunder, the swastika is represented by a simple black cross to get around laws such as in Germany that prohibit the display of swastikas on anything other than historical or art representations. And now for the cockpit. Now, first thing, this being a biplane, the view forwards is somewhat restricted by the upper wing and the struts holding it in place. It's not quite as bad as the CR-32, but it's still not good. It does feature, however, an open cockpit, along with all the benefits to visibility that entails. There is also no headrest, so although the pilot might get whiplash, at least he can look directly behind him. Embedded in the upper wing is the compass, a rather odd place to put it I'd say, but hey, at least you can see it easily. Next to the compass is the rear view mirror, first one we've encountered in these videos. It's next to useless here in War Thunder. The resolution in it is so low that if you see an enemy fighter in it, odds are it's shot you down already. In the external view you can see that the mirror is attached to a stalk that sticks up out of the right side of the upper fuselage just in front of the windscreen. In the internal view, however, this stalk is missing. Something to look into, I think, Gaijin. In the upper wing, there are 2 slots cut out, one on either side. I believe that these are handholds so the pilot can grasp them when climbing out of the cockpit. Next you've got the windscreen, 3 small perspex panels bolted to the upper surface of the fuselage in front of the cockpit. The central one has a rectangular slot cut out for the gun sight. The gun sight itself is, in typical German fashion, offset to the right, meaning that the default position of the pilot's head is likewise offset. The reason for this is that most people, around 70%, are right-eye dominant. Through the stereoscopic effect, the pilot would look through the gun sight at the target with his right eye, whereas his left would only see the target. It's difficult to explain how stereoscopic vision works, but in short, this effect and how the brain wires up the images received from each eye makes it so that to the pilot, even though only the right eye is looking through the gun sight, the sight appears to be in front of both eyes, while forward vision at the target is unimpaired due to the fact that the left eye is not looking through a gun sight, allowing the pilot to track the target easier. Whatever you think of this arrangement, the Germans must have thought it worked, as they kept using offset gun sights on all their fighters until the end of the war. If you are left-eye dominant, welcome to bomber school, I guess. Now, the HE-51 features a ring and bead gun sight, although there is a small glass panel between the ring and the bead that appears as though it's meant for a reflector gun sight, although none of the HE-51s feature one. The reason for this, I think, is that the windscreen has a tab cut out for the gun sight. This means that the gun sight can be switched out for a different type, such as a telescopic or collimator sight. Because such a device would need to be poking through the windscreen so that the pilot can press his eye up to it, a hole had to be cut out of the windscreen. When using the ring and bead gun sight, however, that hole would still be there. This would mean that air would rush through it and straight into the pilot's face, which is neither comfortable nor beneficial, especially if the engine happens to be spraying hot oil or coolant everywhere after taking a hit. And so a small glass rectangle is fitted to the ring and bead gun sight in order to fill this hole. Underneath the gun sight, attached to the rim of the cockpit, is a leather pad. This is so that if the plane must make a forced landing, the pilot won't bash his head on the edge of the cockpit. Now for the instrument panel. Firstly, on the left there is the magneto selector switch. A magneto, by the way, is a small electrical generator using permanent magnets that produce an alternating current to the engine, allowing it to start. Aircraft use magnetos because they are independent of the aircraft's main electrical system. This means that, even if the aircraft suffers a complete electrical failure, the engine will keep running. Most piston-engine aircraft have 2 magnetos per engine, each one connected to one of the 2 spark plugs per cylinder. This is done for redundancy's sake. To the right of the magneto selector switch is the altimeter, measured in kilometers. There is a little knob attached to the dial with which the pilot can adjust it in correspondence to changes in air pressure brought about by differing weather conditions. The little dial inside the altimeter dial is actually what displays the air pressure. To the right of the altimeter is the airspeed indicator, measured in kilometers per hour. To the right of that is the turn and slip indicator. The needle indicates how much the aircraft is banked to either side, and the bubble tube shows how much side slip the aircraft is currently undergoing. Next is the engine tachometer, measured in revolutions per minute, multiplied by 100. So if the engine is pointing at 10, we know that the engine is currently turning at 1000 revolutions per minute. And lastly, on the right there is the chronometer. Moving down, under the main flight instruments, are the engine control gubbins. Firstly, on the left, the big red lever is the throttle. The yellow one is the fuel mixture control lever, and the green one opens and closes the radiator. Those 2 red levers are the fuel tank cocks, used to control fuel flow from the main and auxiliary fuel tanks. Next, that switch with the numbers is apparently the device for adjusting the sensitivity of the turn and slip indicator. Empfindlichkeitsvendreiger literally translates to sensitivity agility, so if you know what that means, why not say so in the comments? Next along is the fuel pressure indicator, then the oil pressure indicator, then the exhaust temperature indicator, and finally the oil temperature indicator. If those needles start to move erratically, then you've got trouble. The big red button labelled Netzausschalter is the emergency cut-off switch for the engine. Pull this switch if, for example, the engine catches fire. The The big orange button is the main electrical switch. And last of all, that orange dial there is the fuel gauge in litres. Oh, and tucked in over there on the right is the fuel hand pump. Use this to squirt fuel into the engine before starting. Now for the other controls scattered around this cockpit. First of all, those three knobs there control, I believe, the trim tabs. That thing that looks suspiciously like a handbrake is, as far as I can tell, the lever for adjusting the height of the seat. Likewise, that big turning crank handle moves the seat back and forwards. The big yellow lever on the right is, I think, the main fuel cut-off valve, and the little metal one, I think, adjusts the amount of fuel being squirted by the fuel pump. It's attached to a rod that disappears behind the instrument panel, right next to the fuel pump. The dial tucked behind the flight stick looks to be the voltmeter, and those two buttons and that knob likely have something to do with the electrical system as well. In the middle there, that, as I'm sure you've deduced, is the flight stick, this time of the hooped variety. At the top there is the trigger for the main armament. The lever on the right is most likely the brake lever, and down at the bottom there are of course the rudder pedals. So, as cockpits go, the HE51A1 doesn't do too badly. Visibility is not bad for a biplane, the instruments and controls are all nicely laid out and easy to read or reach. Although the engine readouts are on a recessed panel separate from the main flight instruments, this I feel actually helps in decluttering the instrument panel. Most of the controls are large and easy to grasp, and they are even colour-coded. Red is engine control, yellow is fuel-related, and green has to do with airflow. I think the HE51's cockpit rivals that of the P-26 for neatness and efficiency, and may even exceed it in this regard. Well done, Germany! There does, however, appear to be a distinct lack of either a radio or any way to control one, unless those switches above the voltmeter are radio controls. In fact, what I thought to be a voltmeter may actually be the radio frequency display, controlled by that switch, and the two buttons switch between high and low frequency. You know what, that actually makes sense. Aren't I clever? Now, let's move on to the Heinkel HE51B1. According to my super-secret sources, the main difference between the A1 and the B1 was that the B1 featured structural strengthening. Indeed, you can see that the bracing wires are slightly thicker than those on the A1. There is also a second bracing wire connecting the landing gear main wheels to the lower wings on each side. The other big difference is the addition of a 170-litre jettisonable fuel tank between the main wheels. While this is, as far as I can tell, not jettisonable in War Thunder, it does effectively double the aircraft's fuel capacity, raising the maximum flight time from 50 minutes to 1 hour and 41 minutes. I would recommend, of course, never carrying more than 30 minutes of fuel in game, so this feature is somewhat less useful than it would be in the real world. Another big difference between the HE51A1 and the B1 is that the B1 is painted, as you can see, in the paint scheme utilised by the Spanish nationalists and the Condor Legion during the Spanish Civil War. The black St. Andrew's cross on the white rudder, the black roundels, the white crosses on the upper wing surfaces and the white wingtips are all typical of the nationalist aircraft markings. What seems to be less standard, however, is the camouflage pattern, which consists of a three-tone disruptive pattern of dark green, brown black and light blue-grey. This is, as far as I can tell, a non-standard camouflage pattern. German aircraft in this time were usually painted in either plain light blue-grey, such as on the HE51C1, or a three-tone splinter pattern, as is seen on the Heinkel HS123 or the Dornier Do 17E1. The underside is also painted sky blue, which was not standard at the time. An alternate camouflage pattern you can apply to the HE51B1, however, is that typically used by Italian aircraft during the Spanish Civil War. It contains the usual mess of black discs and white crosses, but the camouflage itself is mottled green on a tan background, with pale blue underside. Other than all that, the Heinkel HE51B1 is pretty much the same as the A1. The armament, internal layout and cockpit are all identical, as is the fact that neither of these aircraft feature anything in the way of armour. Next is the Heinkel HE51C1. This model was the version modified to perform as a ground attack aircraft, and as such it features 6 ETC-10/VLD bomb racks, which allows this aircraft to carry 6 10kg SD-10C bombs. These weapons are next to useless, containing only 0.75 kilograms of TNT. These require a direct hit to be in with any hope of killing anything, even soft-skinned vehicles. In ground battles, who knows, you might get lucky and land a bomb directly on top of a T-26, but that's unlikely. Other than that, the C1 is pretty much identical to the B1, same guns, no armour, same overall layout including its external fuel tank. One difference is, however, that the C1 features only one bracing wire between the main wheels and the lower wings on each side, which suggests that this is in fact an HE51A1 that has been modified to bring it up to the standard of a C1. One last difference is the paint scheme. This time it is light blue-grey all over, which is more typical of German aircraft during the Spanish Civil War. There are, however, no alternate camouflage patterns. Also, forgot to mention, on both the HE51B1 and the C1, the propeller has been painted but is still made of wood. Spruce, most likely. Now, the last aircraft that we'll look at in detail today is the Heinkel HE51C1/Late. This aircraft is sadly no longer available to new players. It was removed from the tech tree some time ago, meaning that today only people who own this aircraft from before can fly it today. Other than that, it's pretty much unremarkable. It's mostly identical to the HE51C1, other than the camouflage pattern, and the fact that on each side, strung between the landing gear main wheels and the lower wings, are two bracing wires instead of only one. This means that the C1/Late was either built from scratch as a C variant, or that it's upfitted B variant. Also, although it also features a disruptive camouflage pattern like the B1, on the C1/Late it is only a two-tone pattern as opposed to the B1's three-tone. Green and light blue-grey. That's all you get. There are no alternative camouflage patterns. One last change implemented on the HE51C1/Late is the addition of a pilot's headrest. It is unarmoured, unpadded, and serves only to restrict his rearward vision, but hey, at least now he has something stopping him from getting whiplash. The last version of the Heinkel HE51 that we have here in War Thunder is of course the HE51B2. This is, as you can see, a float plane, and as such can land on water. This ability, however, sacrifices a bit of speed in the air, as well as the ability to land on land. Although, of course, you can land on land, it's just not advisable. Other than that, it's just an ordinary HE51. It doesn't even have a drop tank, and it cannot carry bombs. The B2 was, as far as I can tell, only ever available during the 2014 War Thunder 2-year anniversary event. As I was at university at that time, and because said university prohibited the updating of War Thunder because of their stupid policy on torrenting, I missed the event, and as a result I do not own a Heinkel HE51B2. Maybe I should sue him for impeding my business. Oh well, there's a chance it might be available again in a future event, so I'll try to get it for you, my dear viewers, then. And that brings the history and technical details section of this video to a close. But don't worry, there is more excitement yet to come. For now, it's time to see how this little quartet of German biplanes fare in battle. So, the first battle didn't go so well, unfortunately. I decided to pick a fight with one of these French fighters, but then it turns out, oh no, he's got a cheeky SB-2M friend. A bomber wants to come and have a go. And then the French fighter, he takes advantage of that opportunity, and then there's a Fury, and the SB-2M comes back, and it's all a big mess. And I end up being outmaneuvered because I'm being attacked by 3 people, and he shoots my tail off. So this aeroplane is mostly unflyable now, so I jump out and jump into my parachute. Damn you, Fury. Next up, this battle went a little bit better. We were taking off. There's a C-200 over there, and everybody's already up in the air, so we better go and join them. Don't want to be left behind. There you can see just how quickly the HE-51 takes off, especially if you use the flaps. It's almost a stall aircraft. Short takeoff or landing. And landing, I guess. Like the Fiesler Storch! Anyway, so there's some enemies over there. We're going to go over there and say hello. In our little German biplane. There's a Polycarpal I-15 over there. Well, we're about on par in terms of performance, so it should be an even fight. Also a BB-1. They're quite dangerous, but also a bit flimsy. And oh no, a whole bunch more enemies have shown up. We got Furies and D751s and the other one with the Hurricane. No matter, we shall charge in unrelentingly. There's another French fighter up there. D501. He's got a cannon. Shall be wary of him. And yep, he's going for me, so I'm gonna do some evasive maneuvers. And he misses. Aha! And now we turn onto him. Because we're much more manoeuvrable than a silly little French aeroplane. He can't shake me. And we pick him apart with our little MG-17s. There we go. And see how effective these guns are. If you can keep shooting at it, you'll pick it apart in no time. Alright, there's another French fighter down there, so I think we're going to go say hello. Although, there are lots of other people going on him. Never mind, we're going to attack him. Oh, no, too late. Looked like he was trying to land for some reason. Maybe his engine was busted. Oh no. Oh, that's... Oh, and we're hit by flak. And that is a Curtis Hawk, the French version. So we got to try and avoid him, and he's going after someone else, as it turns out. And we're leaking oil and water everywhere because of the flak. Take a few pot shots at him, but he's going too quickly. So we're going to turn back and try and make it back to base. Because once your coolant's hit, there's not really much you can do. He shoots down our friend in the CR-42. Now he's going for me. He misses, fortunately, and then he goes after the C-200 or the HE-100. Flak's very thick. Should be doing evasive manoeuvres right here. We go after one of these flak trucks because I'm annoyed that he broke my coolant system. And now we're gonna try and make it back to base now, with the oil and water spewing everywhere, although technically it's Amatol. Oh, we gonna make it? It's quite far. And that H-75 is still buzzing around. There you can see the cockpit. Engine readouts aren't getting too erratic just yet. So, Looks like we're out of the fire, but are we gonna make it into the frying pan again? Well, here we are, coming in for a landing. Engine's about packing it up. Lower the flaps a little bit. Cut back on the revs. Oh, we're going in. You're probably thinking, oh, this landing is much too shallow. That's what people like you think, isn't it? You're always criticising other people's landings. Well, I says, this ain't a frickin' airliner. It's a silly little biplane. You can land it however you want. You can land it on the roof of the Russian tractor factory if you want to. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. Yeah? And there we go. More perfect landing I don't think you could hope to achieve. With coolant spraying all over everywhere. And turn the engine off. There it goes. So we're going to sit here, rearm, reload, whatever. Then we're going to fly out again. Although it looks like that BR-20's having a go at it. That Fiat BR-20. Oh, that's not the most stable landing I've ever seen. Oh, little bounce. And then nosedive. I should really make a video explaining how does landing. Because it's really not that difficult if you know what you're doing. I says. All high and mighty from my little armchair. Anyway, so up and away again. We're going to shoot down something else now. So we're patrolling for a little while, and all of a sudden that BB-1 appears again. Not BB-8, BB-1. This is an aeroplane, not a ball with a head on it. So we're intercepting. He's probably faster than I am. In fact, he's certainly faster than I am. But we're going to intercept him nonetheless. That C-200 over there looks like he's going to be in the prime position to intercept. And the BB-1's seen that as well. He's going after him. And he runs out of energy. The C-200 swoops down and overshoots by the looks. No, he's behind it and he's shooting at him. And he's probably going to shoot him down before we get there. Never mind. There he goes. So that was the HE-51A1. Now it's on to the HE-51 B1? Yes, B1. So here we are, up in the air. Some enemies over there. Bunch of Russians and more Russians. Russian aircraft. A bit like the Spanish Civil War. They were fighting Russian aircraft. I'm just gonna see what's going on before swooping in there. And oh, there's a MiG-3 over here. Maybe we wanna say hello to him? No, he's already been attacked. So we're gonna go and have a word with this I-15. There's lots of them over there. However, there's also some allies, or fellow Axis aircraft over here, which are tangling with the Russian aircraft up here, so not too much to worry about. Still, you've got to be on your toes, you've got to be looking behind you. We're a small fish in a very big pond. BF-109, I don't know. Right, so we're going to go after this I-15. He looks to be all on his own. So we'd better go and make sure he's got a buddy. But oh no. The BF-109 and the FW-189 have shot down their I-15. And they're going to go and look at this one. Well, we're going to go and see if we can't get off a few shots ourselves. Although everyone does seem to be converging on him. Got to be crafty and seagull-like if we're going to steal this kill. We're swooping in. We see the person holding their Cornish pasty. There he is. Eyes on target. He's ducking and weaving. But here we go. Firing. Shooting our guns. And boom. Just in the nick of time. And we didn't even collide with anyone, so I'd say that's a bonus. There's that FW-189. It's annoying that that was an event aircraft. It was a production aeroplane. They made quite a lot of them. Shouldn't be an event aeroplane. Should be the main tech tree, even if it is a reconnaissance aircraft. Speaking of which, I think they should introduce a reconnaissance aircraft. They'd be very useful in tank battles. You can fly about, spotting enemies, the spotting mechanic that they introduced for light tanks, and get points for all the ones that are blown up. Why don't you do that, Gaijin? Looks like everything's going to be shot at before we get to shoot at them ourselves. There's a light tank, but our puny little machine guns can't go through that. Avoid the trees. And that's it, that's the battle over. Well, we got a kill in that. Next battle, we're in the HE-51C one. And that guy wants to go and crash into a tent. Yes, you do. 10 out of 10 for style, I'll give him that. But 0 out of 10 for taking off fitness. Anyway, because this is a ground attack aircraft, the C-1 was of course a ground attack aircraft, we've loaded up with bombs and we're going to shoot some ground targets. Because I don't even care what you think. You're saying, oh, you're in a fighter, you should go fight. No, I'm in an attacker. That's what this plane was built for. So we're skimming over the surface of the water, keeping out of sight. We're going to go and attack whatever's trying to cross this bridge. The bombs aren't good enough to destroy the bridge, of course. They're not really good enough to destroy anything, but we got them and we're going to use them. I would recommend using these bombs for soft targets, by the way, such as artillery pieces or trucks. Because even a light tank will just shrug it off. They're really not very good bombs. So what's this, a light tank? Well, we dropped 4 on him. And we missed. So we're going to shoot at this thing with our machine guns, shoot at these ground targets, anti-aircraft trucks and the like. An armoured car. Yeah, shooting at us still. Take a couple of nicks. And back for another pass. Blow up an armoured car. And, that French aircraft seems to be heading towards us. hill there's another light tank or armoured car or something over here. Yep, it was an armoured car. Ducking between the trees. Yeah, that French aeroplane is definitely getting quite close. I think he's spotted me. So we're gonna fight him. The good thing about being in a ground attack aircraft fighter is that in a pinch you can use it as a fighter. Unfortunately, this guy seems to know what he's doing, and he's using his superior speed and energy against us. Well, he's going back round for another pass. So we're going to turn back towards him, try and avoid his shots. He overshoots. He's turning around. So are we. Nope, he's zooming off. Take a couple of shots, and one of them manages to hit. He doesn't seem to like that, so we're just going to shoot this truck casually. Now we're going to go attack that Biplane again. Avoid his incoming fire. He does manage to clip our tail, which ruins our flight surfaces, so now we're very unmanoeuvrable. See how shredded up the tailplane is. So I think, well, next pass he's going to shoot me down, so I'm going to shoot at this truck. Get some last minute points. Here he comes. And he's brought a friend, an F3F. Those things are very dangerous. And he tears me apart. And we're too low to bail out. So we go into a flat spin, but I don't think we're going fast enough to crash, and yes, we survived the landing. Which means that we can walk away from it and call it a success. All the same, well done, Mr. Biplane. So, next battle, we're here in the HE-51C1/late. Most of you, well, many of you, won't have seen this aeroplane. It's nothing special, but it's another HE-51, so I'm going to fly it for your amusement. Anyway, we take off with the flaps, and we're going to go to ground attacking again, because that's what this aeroplane was built for. Checking the map, we're going to go to the northwest-ish. So, we're going to fly as low as possible and avoid detection. Fly into this valley with a river in it. Swooping low over the frozen vista. Like in Star Wars. Except instead of a river, that was a Death Star. And instead of an HE-51, that was an X-Wing. Anyway, we're still flying along this river. I go into cockpit mode for maximum dramatic effect. Whoa, check it out. These manoeuvres. Will Smith would be impressed. So we pull up out of the valley, and down below us are all of the enemy's ground targets. In a moment. Watch for the trees. Whoa, that's close. There they are. Right, we've got a stationary tank, so we should be able to kill it with our little bombs, right? If we drop all 6 of them on it. Well, unfortunately, only 4 bombs drop. They're both on target, but doesn't do anything to it. At this point I realise, you know what, these bombs are just useless against anything other than artillery pieces. But then you can use the machine guns for that, so... Ugh. Anyway, so we're shooting up some artillery pieces, some anti-aircraft guns, and the like. Get a few points. doing what we can do with our ground attack aeroplane. Can't do anything against the medium tanks. Another anti-aircraft gun. It's blowed up. And there's another one. That's blowed up as well. And there's some more. Doing a couple of loops. Just to show off. There's an artillery piece. Take a few shots at this one as well, but don't manage to get in enough shots. So we're going to go around for another pass. Well, let's be 2M up there, but as we know from the history section, we're far too slow to intercept it. Oh, but wait. There's another Dewatin over there. Just deal with this anti-aircraft gun. Then we're going to go and see what we can do about this Dewatin. A little check round. No, we're not. We're going to attack some ground targets first. Don't worry, the Dewatin will come to us. Riveting stuff, isn't it? Shooting at ground targets. Some more over here. More things for us to pop with our machine guns. Running a little bit low on ammunition. Got 107 rounds. And there's the Dewatin. Well, we're going to see if we can't intercept him. We're getting closer. We're within 2 kilometres. But there's an H-75 over there. He looks like he's going to try and help his friend. Luckily, a Japanese aircraft that somehow got lost and wandered into the European theatre is going to attack him. So, we're going after this Dewatin, but he is a monoplane and so therefore he can outperform me. And so I give up after a little bit and go back to shooting at ground targets. What do we got? We got a vehicle. So a truck. A rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat. Blew up quickly. Another one. Just missed that last one. So we're going to have to come around for another pass. Oh, he squirted out of the way. The nerve. But we're out of ammunition now, so we're going to fly back and get some more. You can see another perfectly performed landing in the HE-51. The flaps really do make this much too easy. Perhaps a little rough. But no matter, we're down and the plane is undamaged. So we're going to reload, rearm, reuse, recycle, and then we're going to go up again, see what we can do about those last few enemy aeroplanes. So taking off, That Japanese twin-engine fighter's going in for a landing. We're up in the air already. We're swooping over him. There he goes. He donks his landing, but saves it. And so, we're up in the air, we're looking for the last few remaining enemies. I decided to go fighter mode this time. Well, I've kept my bombs in case we don't find anything. I'm going to dump them as soon as we engage in combat. And, oh no, oh! Oh, he jumps us. He surprise attacks us from behind. Ah, that's why you always check your 6, kids. So the pilot's dead. The plane is just drifting down towards the ground now. Don't know why it's jerking to the side like that. So yes, that's why you always check your 6 every 30 seconds when in the combat area. I'm gonna hit a tree. Bang. Oh dear. Well, there you go. The HE-51s. And there you have it, the Heinkel HE-51. All 4 variants of it, plus a little bit on the seaplane version. I think this is a jolly good reserve aircraft. I don't think it's the best, that title still goes to the Polycarp I-15 of course, but it's not the worst. That of course goes to the Fury still. And I think it's quite fun to fly, you know. It's manoeuvrable, it's got adequate weaponry, if you know what to do with them. And they do a little bit of damage. You get these piddly little bombs, so even though they don't really do anything, you can still practice your bombing. And yeah, I think it's an all-round good plane. It's not very fast, but then no biplane is. And it's got flaps, which makes landing and takeoff very easy indeed. So, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching, and hey, if you like these sorts of long-winded, waffling sorts of videos, why not consider subscribing to the channel? We upload at least, well, theoretically once a month. Whether or not that's the actual blah 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 blah, then it remains to be seen, but that is the goal. And hopefully you'll join us for the next one, where we will be taking a little look at everyone's favourite German light tank, the Panzerkampfwagen 2, or Panzer II, to us English speakers. So yes, hopefully see you for that one. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.